Hello, friends of the PipeCat channel. Larry with you once again. It's been a while since I talked to you. And won't you join me in a cigar? I'm about to have a... I just got a shipment of these. These are pretty inexpensive cigars, actually. And they're called Quorum. Can you read that? Anyway. These things are kind of, you buy them in bundles, and they're never really expensive. I believe they're Nicaraguan, but you know, for something like maybe with the amount that you buy, they come out to be about maybe $1.50 a piece or something like that. And let's have a Quorum. Me lighting up this stogie with you right now is just the social content of my video. Usually a Churchill size or thinner. I'll just use my regular lighter for, because I don't know, for some reason using the jet to light everything gets a little, been there, done that after a while. And of course I got to relight it because I just said that, right? What I'd like to speak with you about tonight is, again, sorry, a little grass trimming there for my snip job. It's going to be about guitars. And I guess you could say it's sort of the finale of my experimentation with cheap Chinese Firefly guitars. I've done videos about them. In fact, my original one is sitting here next to me. And the evolution of my experiment with buying those began 8 months ago, when I was seeing reviews online about these, and I got curious, and I thought, well, the money is pretty small. Let's see what happens if you buy one. I bought one. Decided I wanted another one in a different color, so I bought a second one. Decided I want a different model and shape in yet another color, so I did buy a third Firefly guitar. So now I've got the red FF338, the blue FF338, and the metallic green thin line Telecaster. And figuring out roughly in my head what I've spent on those guitars to get them all gig ready. Was not a deal in the long run. So what I'm probably here to recommend to you all, you guitar players, especially those who are beginning, shy away from inexpensive Chinese guitars. Sure, they're pretty, and the finishes are nice. There's a lot to be said for them. There really is. But, you see, the things that can be said for them do not feed the needs of an aspiring guitar player. Just let me tell you that. There are plenty of really good guys out there doing videos singing the praises of Chinese guitars, like Firefly from JSN. And, you know, I've done it myself. I was highly critical of these guitars, and still am. You have to be critical of your instruments. You can't champion one just because you want to love it. You have to love it. Taking one out of a box, playing it, and it sounded reasonable and didn't hurt your hand, it's not enough. It's not enough. I was hoping, I guess, 8 months ago, when I purchased the first one, that I would find some way to make that be enough. But I've not succeeded. The expenditure of replacing the pickups in all three guitars, because that needed to be done. You know, when you first take it out of the box and you play it, you can find some way to like it. But the pickups that came in all three of these guitars were hyper microphonic and way too bright and hard to control. I had no choice but to replace the pickups in all three. I ended up putting Seymour Duncans in the Telecaster. I ended up putting Tone Emporium humbuckers in the two 336s. 338s, I'm sorry. FF338 is what those are. My bad. There's so many 330 numbers in my head right now. You've got Gibson ES335, Gibson ES339, Gibson ES336, and now you've got Firefly FF338. 338 is what I have. Now, $100 each for the two 338s, just for the pickup. So there's $200 spent on two guitars, mind you, for a total of $200 on the pickups. Then the pots, I swapped out the pots, and that, well, those aren't that expensive. You know, a good set of pots. I mean, I probably redid all 8 pots in those two guitars for probably somewhere on the order of $60 because I did the work myself. And mind you, this is doing the work myself. If you have to have someone do it for you, you're going to pay them through the a-hole to do it. Nobody just slaps them in there cheaply. They've got to be done right. You've got to be able to flow the solder correctly. You can't have cold joints, that kind of thing. You got to be careful that they stay in phase. The magnets are in phase with each other. There's a lot to consider. It doesn't seem like much. When you just drop some pickups in a guitar, fine, you can get it to work. But to maximize, optimize, and basically, prioritize it correctly, you do need to do it right. So you take it to a good technician. They're not cheap. They charge pretty good money to do that. Now, the other thing that I've had to do to all three guitars, other than just swap out the pickups and the pots, actually, no, let me back up. On the 338s, on the two semi-hollows that I have, I swapped out the pots, but in the thin line Telecaster, I did not swap out the pots. I left those. Those were pretty good. But I did change the pickups out, and I put Seymour Duncan quarter pounds in them, which you've probably seen in a previous video of mine. Now, with real pickups in these guitars, you can get them to sound pretty good. But when my worry began was when I started to realize how much you can improve these. The first time you find something that can be improved and you do something to improve it, the difference that it makes is so big that you say, oh man, what else do I have to do? What else should I be doing? What else should I be looking for on this guitar to make better? And let me tell you, you want a short list? Tuning pegs. The tuning pegs on these guitars suck out loud. They're about 6-to-1 ratio. And they don't move very easily. You overshoot, you undershoot. Tuning pegs, junk. I left them alone because I've gotten used to them. All right, so I stopped there. The angles, where the tailpiece sits in relationship to the bridge, the angle of the strings as they cross the bridge. You may notice, if you've bought one of these, that the angle of my strings as they cross the bridge is actually, it's straighter than it was when the guitar arrived. The tailpiece was lower to the wood when the guitar came. So the string angle was more, I guess you'd call that acute. I don't know, the string angle was greater. And some people say, well, that's good. It allows more transfer of vibration into the wood. Well, yes, but there is a caveat there. You sometimes sacrifice one aspect of a guitar for another when you adjust things like that. It was pointed out to me by a very good luthier that the string angle on that guitar, the way it came, and again, it's a minor fix, but it's just one of the things that you find. The string angle was such that it was creating, less playability on the strings. When you raise that tailpiece up a little bit and let that relax just a little bit more, you find you actually do have a little bit more playability. Bending is easier. In other words, it just will allow it to just move ever so slightly, so imperceptibly, but your fingers know the difference. And the tiredness of your hand, will begin to alleviate a little bit when you do that. That's one thing. So you've got the tuning pegs that suck. You've got the angles. And the other thing, really, that he pointed out to me, and this I didn't notice at all. If you look at the neck angle, all right? Here's the neck, nice and straight. Look at how much the body, look at the angle. You see that? I'm trying to get it so you can get a good, so anyway. The neck angle. It's crazy deep. It's deeper than it ever needed to be. Why they did it that way, I'm not sure. But in doing that, now what happens, if you go to lay that guitar down flat on its back, you'll find that it's actually lying on the tip of its head. And on top of that, that head is very tall. So the tip of the head is even further protruding, emphasizing the effect that really big neck angle has when you go to lay the guitar down. You have to have a neck rest if you're going to service that guitar, because you just can't lie it flat on its back. It just doesn't work that way. Just one of the things that they probably didn't consider in China or at JSN when they designed the guitar. Why they made that angle like it is, I do not know. I don't know I don't know if they intended to do that or if it's just the way it came out. But that angle is probably 3 times what it needs to be. A Gibson guitar of a similar design like that, you'll find that the neck angle is much less. So that's another thing. You can't improve that. There's nothing you can do about that. That's a set neck. That's not going nowhere. The amount of work you'd have to do to change that angle, no luthier would even want to do. It'd be a nightmare. So, excuse me. That's another thing. Little things like that. And then you realize that no one has a Firefly guitar that's more than a couple of years old. They didn't have them 10 years ago. So nobody can tell you what its long-run reliability is going to be. No one can tell you how that finish holds up over 15 years, And again, you spend $139 on the guitar, great. But now I've spent another $100 on the pickups. I've spent money, and time, leveling, crowning, polishing those frets at least twice. I had to replace one fret on there, by the way. The 12th fret had a divot in it right underneath the B string. And even after I leveled them down, I still could not get that divot out. It was too deep. I at first tried filling it in with solder and doing it the cheap way, but that wears out after a month, and you're back to having a divot again. So I ended up having to have that one fret replaced. I didn't want to do it myself because I didn't know what lurked underneath those frets. I'd rather have a luthier do it. That's when I took it to the guy, and when he changed out that fret, he realized that none of the frets in there were glued. Now, a lot of companies don't glue their frets in, and that's all well and good. But he said to me, Larry, I guarantee you, if you let me go through and put ultra-thin CA glue, super glue, under, let me wick it into all of the frets, you'll see a marked improvement in tone. And wasn't he right? Now, he did that for me, and he charged me $25 to do it because I don't have that kind of super glue in the house. And by the time I bought it, I'd buy more than I'd ever use. So I just said, look, $25 one time, see if it works. If it does work, then I'll go out and buy some maybe. So I may, because it actually did improve the tone of that guitar. He was right. But to condense everything down into one small statement, the money you're going to spend on getting these guitars to be not only good enough to gig with, and this is important for you new players, good enough to learn on. The subtleties of being a good guitar player are small. If you learn on a guitar that has behavior that's outside the quality expectation of a really good guitar, later on when you purchase a really good guitar or play someone else's really nice guitar, you're going to feel the difference. And you're going to look back and say, oh man, I could have had this. I could have had this from day one. So if you're really serious about learning and you want to buy one of these cheap Chinese guitars, I can't stop you from doing it, but I will advise you of this. Save your money. get at least twice as much as you were going to spend on one of these, maybe $300, and then you start looking for a good used guitar, or maybe a high-end Squire, you know, or a Mexican Fender. My Fenders are Mexicans, and they're beautiful, all of them. You know, you can go out and buy an Epiphone Dot, you know, a used one, you know, for pretty decent money. The same money that you're going to sink into this Chinese guitar to get it to be good. Because it may not be you who discovers what's wrong with this guitar when you buy it. It might be someone else who plays it and says, did you ever notice this? And when they start saying, did you ever notice this? You're going to start noticing other things like I did, and you're going to come to the conclusion that I should have saved my money and bought something of higher quality. I am not going to say that they're bad guitars, but I am going to say that they are not, quote unquote, you know, I'm not even going to call them player guitars, because player guitars are the most important kind of all. Okay, when you play a gig with a guitar, you know, you could stand there and act like George Lynch or somebody, or Joe Satriani or Larry Carlton for a half an hour and do it on a borrowed guitar. You know, you could do that. You know what I mean? That only had to last you through a performance. But a player guitar is the one that you're sitting in your living room and you're feeling sad and you want to play the blues, and you pull that guitar out because that's the one that makes you feel the best. That's the most important guitar. And don't do that to yourself with an inexpensive Chinese guitar. That's my advice. I have gotten mine to where they're okay for now, and now only age alone will tell how they hold up. Because I play them fairly gently, but I still play them a little bit hard, and over time I'm going to see what wear and tear does to these guitars. They're just not old enough to know yet. So that's my word. And now, a word about my Quorum cigar. This inexpensive cigar I gotta tell you, it's really nice. It's a mild cigar. It's a dark wrapper. It's probably like a Connecticut wrapper, I think. Yep, handmade Nicaragua. J.C. Newman Cigar Company makes Quorum cigars, and you buy them in a package of what, 20, I think it was? 20, comes in a tight bundle for like 25, 30 bucks, something like that for the whole thing. And when I bought it, I said, please, please, let me not make a bad commitment on that many cigars, because it'll take me a long time to get through them. And I don't want to be stuck with them taking up all the room in my humidor when I could be getting nicer cigars that I like more. Luckily, I busted one out. I clipped the end off it. And I smoked it this morning. And I said, wow, that's pretty damn good. It's a sweetish, mellow, dark wrapped cigar. It is not hard as a rock, but it's not soft either. The wrapper is nice. I don't see any flaws in it. It doesn't come apart when the end gets wet, It burns pretty evenly. You saw me like that. And I've been smoking it while I've been talking to you. I'm down 1/4 of an inch. Yeah. I was about to let it go out, but anyway, pretty good. Quorum cigar. If you're thinking about buying cigars, you like a Churchill-sized cigar with a nice flavor, nice and mild. Your golf course cigar, there you go, Quorum. So I'm going to leave it right there for now. To recap, try not to buy Chinese. Try to buy a halfway decent quality, either. And I'm not saying USA all the way. I do believe in buying US-made products, but it's a global world, okay? And the Chinese people are cranking out stuff left and right, but they're still in learning stages. They're trying to crank out what the Americans and Europeans, and the rest of Asia are going to buy. So they're taking ideas and they're knocking them out by the million, and that's why you can get a guitar that cheap. It's worth mentioning right here that a lot of great guitar brands that I've mentioned, such as Squire and Epiphone, others like Washburn, are made by the Samick company in Korea. So China isn't the only Asian country that is cranking out guitars. Korea has been doing it to a standard that America and Europe have sworn by for many years. And I'm only saying that, so that I'm not singling out China. It's just that China hasn't used the same standard so far for their knockoff guitars. But, for the US, Europe, South American standard, you're going to want a better guitar than these Chinese knockoffs. So instead of buying one Firefly guitar for $139 and walking around bragging, save up for two of them, but buy one used Epiphone Dot, or a Les Paul Jr. Studio Les Paul, something like that, or a really nice Squier Strat, Squier Telly. There's some decent Squiers out there. There really are. You don't have to spend this kind of money. If you buy one of those guitars, provided it doesn't have a manufacturing flaw in it for whatever reason, I think you'll find that it is already at a level that it would take you a couple of $100s to bring this Chinese one up to. So that's my word. Thank you for tuning into the PipeCat channel one more time, and for listening to my rant about guitars and cigars and sometimes confusing the two. Hey, stop by once in a while and say hello. It was nice to see you.